Hi, this is Alex. You might know my mom, Heather, from Shine.fm. This is the Shine.fm Momcast. Take it away.
I'm glad to have you, and I'm glad to talk about your book and also to be able to talk about your story a little bit. So introduce yourself to our listeners, Bud.
Hi, my name is Bud Fountain. I live in Indianapolis, and I have had a very interesting career that has included opportunities where I worked with 3 Fortune 500 companies. I've been a college football coach as well as an instructor at the college level, and I'm also a published author. So I have really been blessed to have the opportunity to do many different things in my life and to treat each one as a learning experience that hopefully has helped me to be a better coach, to be a better teacher, be a better husband, all of those things. And I guess out of all of that, I had written my first of 3 books, the first book called The Missing Piece, the byline of that book being Our Search for Security in an Insecure World. And I'm glad to talk to you today about that.
Yeah, so this book you wrote 30 years ago? Like it's around 30 years old?
Yes, I actually started writing the book in 1990, and very interestingly, at that point, 1990, I'm about a 40-year-old man.
Uh-huh.
I'm an officer of a publicly traded software company. I'm living in Orlando, Florida. I got 2 children, a lovely wife. I mean, we had the picture, so to speak, but unbeknownst to me, we did not have the picture. And I went through a divorce, which I did not see coming, and it was life-changing for me. And for somebody who kind of thought I thought I had kind of figured out life, Heather.
Yeah.
40, got a nice home where everything is good. We pay our bills on time. We take nice vacations. All of a sudden, my family unit and everything came crashing down around me. And I had always thought I'd want to write a book, but I wasn't sure on what. And all of a sudden, I just decided one day sitting in Chicago O'Hare, I saw all these people walking in the airport, but everybody had some sort of carry-on with them. They had an attaché case, women had purses, whatever, shoulder bags, backpacks. And I thought, isn't that the way life is? We all have baggage that we take with us somewhere. So I said, you know what? Maybe I need to write a book just about my life experiences. And literally, that is where I started writing the book as I was sitting right in Chicago O'Hare Airport.
Wow, and you're right. What a great picture that God showed you in that as you were thinking about your baggage, also looking at everybody else, even though we can't see always that baggage. Well, this book is written very interestingly in the sense that it starts out with a short story. And as I was reading that, my kids were like, what are you reading? And I'm like, well, I don't quite know yet because I don't feel like I've gotten into the book yet. But talk to me about the story that you start with. Is that a true story? And why did you decide to start the book out with that story?
You know what? Originally, I did not have the short story. I started with when I said, okay, our search for security in an insecure world. How do we all try to find that special place where we know our life has meaning and things really matter? And that's where, I went through, Heather, and I said, geez, let's look at our education through learning and the accumulation of knowledge, security in the workplace, financial security, through marriage, parenthood, all the different activities that we do. What are the things that try to bring meaning to our life? And as I was working on those things, all of a sudden I got this idea for a short story. And it's about a grandfather and his grandson who spend a day together, which they thought they were going to go out and hike in the woods and go fishing. And they're up at Lake Placid, New York. I chose that as the venue for the story. But the weather was horrible. They couldn't do that. The grandfather told the grandson, hey, this is going to be one of the best days we've ever had together. And he pulls out a jigsaw puzzle, and they spend the day by a nice warm fire in the fireplace making this puzzle. And when they're finally done, there's one piece that's missing. And the little boy gets all upset. He goes, geez, if we don't have that piece, we can't finish the puzzle. But the grandfather, who's obviously much older, much wiser, he said, no, I think that piece is trying to teach us a lesson. And what he says to the grandson is, our lives are like a puzzle. Your life will paint a certain picture, and every piece in that puzzle is a person that touches your life in some way. It could be a school teacher, might be a minister at your church, might be one of your siblings, your mom or dad. But the picture is completed by all those different pieces. And it just goes to show you, if you're missing even one piece, that you don't have the complete picture. And what he was trying to say to his grandson is, everybody has value. Everybody is important when you consider your puzzle. So that was the short story I came up with. And if you get into the book, when I begin every chapter, I revert back to the short story, and I talk a little bit about Billy's grandfather and Billy. And I talk, for example, in the chapter that's on education and the accumulation of knowledge, I say, geez, I wonder what Billy's grandfather's education was like. And we don't know. Did he have a PhD? Was he a college educated? Maybe he only had a high school degree, but we really didn't care, and it didn't matter to Billy in the story. So I always reflect back on those two characters at the beginning of each chapter. And it really gave the book some very nice continuity as you went through those different chapters.
Yeah, for sure. So there's 7 different life issues that you address. Let's talk about why you chose those 7 and how you think that's applicable to many different people in lots of different situations.
Well, you know, as I started to just write them down, and when I was writing the book, I took manila folders and I labeled each folder with one. For example, one of those was learning and the accumulation of knowledge. And, you know, think about when we're young, our parents always tell us, well, you got to get that degree. You got to graduate from high school. Hey, you need to go to college. You go to college. Oh, you need to get that MBA. And, you know, we always think that, oh, yeah, got to get that. But there's no real guarantee that comes with that piece of paper.
Right. That's
it's what you truly do in terms of the actions when you go out into the world. And then if you think about security in the workplace, well, I'll tell you, I've been an officer of a publicly traded company. I've worked for Procter & Gamble, Xerox, IBM, great companies. But I can tell you, I've been let go from jobs. I've been caught in resource actions. A company got sold. I was a senior vice president. The new company comes into my office, says, thank you very much. You did a great job, but we don't need you anymore. There's the door. I mean, where's the guarantee that I thought I had in that job? And when you start to go through it, we think in terms of financial security. Well, all of a sudden I could be making more money than I've ever made before or something. The next thing I know, you hear these stories, somebody goes to a doctor and they find out they've got cancer or they're terminally ill. So in all those things that I talked about, and we get into relationships and marriage and even parenthood, I like to point out, and I did it asking a lot of questions in the book of the reader, so they have to kind of reflect on their own life. But there aren't guarantees here. These are, we think there are, we think we're the ones in control, but in reality, we're not. And that's what I tried to touch on in those 7 different aspects of life, because they apply to pretty much everybody. That's the other thing about the book, that this book speaks to anybody. You can be a CEO with a Fortune 500 company or a kindergarten teacher. If you read this book, you're going to find things that apply to you in your life.
That's awesome. And I think especially during this time, Bud, with the pandemic, I think many people are realizing, at least I have more and more, how much we don't control, how much we're not in charge. So let's talk a little bit about that 7th chapter, that 7th section, the other missing piece. What is that all about, Bud?
Okay, when you get to, there's the 3rd part of the book.
Oh, that 3rd section.
Because I labeled the 2nd part, our search for security. The 3rd part I call the other missing piece, but that's spelled P-E-A-C-E, not like a piece in the puzzle. The the peace that we all hear and define. And I said, what should we really be looking for in the course of our life, instead of just wanting security or the things that we get? And you know what? That's it. When I cover those 7 things, whether it's in the workplace, financial security, those are all about things we do kind of for ourselves. When we really are looking for the other missing piece, we find that when we do things for other people, when we adopt more of a service attitude and a servant mindset. So, for example, there's 3 chapters in that, or really 4 chapters that I talk about that as an overview, but then 3 things that have to do with how we find the other missing piece. And for an example, the very first one is learning to give is learning to live. I mean, we truly do. When we may think we're living our lives, but it's not till we make that unique discovery that when we do something out of the goodness of our heart, out of our compassion, the love we have for other people is part of the Great Commission, love your neighbors as you love yourself. When we do something for our neighbor, the reward that we get from that is just overwhelming sometimes. It's the greatest feeling. There's no other way we get that unless we give of ourselves. So it's like one of the ways that we do truly find that missing piece. And that's what the 3rd section of the book is talking about. Okay, maybe I can give my life meaning. Maybe when the day comes that I am done on this planet and it's time for me to go and have my judgment day with God, whatever it may be, I want to know that somehow I made a difference. And if we did that, we probably will have found our missing piece.
That's really good. Yeah. I'm glad that you included that as part of the book, because I think that we can look so much inward at ourselves and try to fix ourselves. But a lot of times I know, and I just did something today. I tried to bless somebody with something good that they're doing in the community. And it feels good to not be always thinking about ourselves and to be thinking about other people and doing stuff for others, even if it doesn't seem like it's, I don't know. Sometimes I think about it on grand scales. Like I like to think of, grand gestures, but sometimes just donating some socks or hats and gloves to an organization that is going to get those things out to people. It really does make you feel different. It makes you focus on the things around you and not always in yourself. So that's really good.
You know what, Heather, it's interesting. I met a very close friend of mine this morning for breakfast. And as I got to the restaurant, I was there ahead of my friend, and this older gentleman, yes, believe it or not, older than me, got out of the pickup truck, and he was walking with 2 canes. I held the door for him. He said, no, I'm going to buy a newspaper first. And the newspaper machine was about 10 or 12 feet away. And I said, oh, wait a second, let me go down there. Well, I went down there. I reached in my pocket. Sure enough, I had some loose change. The newspaper cost me $1. I put $1 in there. I got the newspaper. I brought it back to him. He said, well, I need to pay you. I said, no, you don't. It's a newspaper. I said, now the news will be even better news. You didn't have to pay for it. He chuckled, and he went on in the restaurant. But, I thought about it that day. I said, what a simple gesture, but maybe that made that guy's day a little bit better. Now he's sitting there reading the news with his cup of coffee. He didn't have to pay $1 for it.
Right.
So it's just like you say, it's not the things we have to do on such a grand scale, but it's sometimes doing the things that God would want us to do. And what is the one song? So, you can see Jesus in me. If I do things where people could see and act whatever it is that I do, and they could see Jesus in me, then, boy, that's what life is all about.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, this was your first of 3 books that you've written.
Yes.
You've done a lot of different things in your life. We're going to talk a little bit about that in just a little bit. But what made you, what advice would you give to someone who's maybe thinking about writing a book? And you shared a little bit of that process, which I think is really, really cool because I think it's very different for other people. But what kept you engaged in the effort? What kept you going? Because I'm sure even in that first book, or maybe even the second and the third, you had doubts of should I be doing this or should this come to fruition, that kind of thing. So share some advice or kind of your process of writing books.
I would first off say be patient with yourself because I started writing this book in 1990. I did not have a completed manuscript until 2001.
Oh, wow.
So writing the book for me, Heather, was very cathartic. I mean, I learned about myself, and as I would write certain chapters, I'd go back and then I'd read a chapter and I'd say, geez, I don't feel that way now. Well, I had written that 3 years ago. And maybe something had transpired in my life in those 3 years and so forth that made me think a little bit differently. But, you know, I wrote the book, absolutely was a no-name person. So trying to then, back around 2000, things have changed in the last 20 years. But, you know, you went to traditional publishers. And like people would say to you, well, you know, who the heck are you? You're not Dr. Phil. I know I'm not, but I've had some pretty interesting experiences and you know, it's hard sometimes to even get somebody to take you serious. But I did find, God bless her, Janice Phelps, with a publishing company called Lucky Press out of Lancaster, Ohio at the time. And I reached out to her and we had a nice telephone conversation. She said, you do have a finished manuscript? And I said, yes. And she asked for a copy. I sent it to her. And a week later, she called me and she said, hey, I think you're onto something here. We want to publish your book. And I drove over there and we sat down and met. And sure enough, the book came out. So I tell people, if you think you have a book, if there's some subject or something that's burning inside you and you feel passionate about, go ahead and do it. I've got to tell you this, Heather. This is really funny. The first book signing I did was at a Borders bookstore. And I remember Janice told me, she said, no, Bud, nobody knows you. Nobody knows this book. I mean, if you could sell 2 books in the 2-3 hours you're there Saturday afternoon, that would be great. And I'm thinking, I worked this hard. I mean, it's been 11, 12 years to get this thing published.
Yeah.
And now I'm doing a book signing and I'm going to sell 2 books. Are you kidding me? Well, a guy came in and I talked with him briefly, and he said, hey, that sounds interesting, and he bought a copy. And he went over in the cafe and got a cup of coffee and started talking to some other people. All of a sudden, he comes back to me. He goes, I want to buy 16 more copies of your book. Oh. And I said, really? And he said, yeah. He said, I just read the short story, and I am a dentist, and my dental practice, we have a trip we take every year, and we pick a theme. I'm going to give every one of my employees a copy of your book. I want them to read the short story, and that's going to be the theme for our whole getaway weekend, The Missing Piece. And I thought, geez, well, I ended up between that gentleman and the other books, I sold like 52 books.
Oh, that's
and my
awesome.
First time. And when I called my publisher, she about died. She said, you are kidding me. She said, how many friends and relatives do you have in Indianapolis? I said, well, they're all friends and relatives now because they bought the book. But I was very, very fortunate. And I did have another signing. I went back to Orlando, Florida on a weekend. And my wife went with me, and I contacted the Borders down there. And I used to live in Orlando. I lived there 17 years. I coached youth sports when I was there. So I'm talking to the manager of the bookstore, and he said, well, how many books do you think I should order? And I said, well, I would tell you to order 100 books. Literally, he says to me, hey, who do you think you are, Dr. Phil? I love that line, And I said, no. I'm not Dr. Phil. I understand it. But I said, I lived in Orlando for 17 years. I worked with a couple different companies. I'm going to have a radio interview the Friday going into that weekend. I think you can return the books. Well, they ordered 100 books, and we sold 88 books.
Oh, wow.
That day in the book signing. So, you know what? This book and my other 2 books have absolutely been a blessing to me in my life. I have met people from across the country. I had an incident where I was walking through the Pittsburgh airport and saw a total stranger reading my book. So I went up and introduced myself. And just I really have been blessed through the people that I've met and the things that I learned about myself writing this book, as well as the other two that I've written. So, yeah.
That's awesome.
It's been great.
Well, let's talk a little bit about your story. You are a former All-American, all-academic All-American football player. You were a college football coach. Now you're a team chaplain. I just want you to talk a little bit about what sports has meant to you. You still referee. I think you do lacrosse, right? Am I right?
Lacrosse and hockey.
Yeah.
I'm sure.
Two pretty tough sports, if you ask me. And so talk a little bit about what sports has meant to you, why you continue to be involved, and what kind of message you can give to parents about kids' involvement in sports.
You know, I really loved being around athletics. I love being around athletics. I love being around young athletes, and that includes both men and women. I love to see them in an environment where they can learn real life lessons and learn about one another. You know, you talk about the difficult times we're going through. There's nothing better than I love, like where I've been coaching the last 13 years at Franklin College, which is an NCAA Division III school here in Indiana. But to step into the huddle and see Asian American, African Americans, white kids from lily white suburbs, and just all walks of life. And they're all there together, working together to be the best team they can be. And it's just an environment where I think young people can learn such valuable lessons from one another. I am not a big proponent, like my third book is called Coaching is Teaching at its Best. It's about helping coaches to be the best teachers they can be. And one of the things I talk about there is I say, you coaches, you put way too much pressure on yourself, always thinking about your win-loss record. Mm-hmm. At the end of the day, the guys that I coach who are college athletes, they are not going to play in the NFL. But hopefully the lessons they learn, Heather, from the coaches, from their game day situations, from situations at practice and whatever, if they're going to go out into the world, they're going to be the best husbands they can be. They're going to be the best fathers they can be. They're going to be responsible members of their community. They're going to have learned life lessons that transfer to make them the best men they can be. And a big part of that, especially at our program at Franklin, and now what I've done the last 3 seasons, is being able to be the team chaplain, because I get to share with them how important it is for them to understand and have the presence of Jesus Christ in their life. You know, it's a very difficult time when you're in college. There's a lot of peer pressure, and, you know, there's a lot of things that go on a college campus that can get kids in trouble and so on and so forth. And I talk to them a lot about being brave for Jesus Christ. Mm-hmm. I mean, if you've accepted Jesus Christ as your Lord and Savior, and you have the presence of Him living in you, and you feel that, and you know He's there, then when you're confronted by those peer group situations where you may be tempted to do something or go somewhere you're not supposed to be, that's when you have to be brave and stand up for everything that Jesus stood up for all of us when He died on the cross. Mm-hmm. And you need to be able to say, hey, guys, I'm not going there. And you shouldn't either. And here's the reason why. And so, you know what? I've had a chance to bring that into my athletic career. I'll be very honest, it wasn't a part always of my career, but my junior year in college, when my dad had a stroke, of all things, here I am playing in a game on Parents' Weekend, and my dad's in a hospital at home in a coma, and my mom is at his bedside. So neither of my parents were there. When we went out to take the field that day, I knelt on the 33-yard line at the south end of the field at Ashland, then Ashland College, now Ashland University in Ohio, and I recommitted my life to Jesus Christ. And when I opened my eyes, 2 of my teammates had laid their hands on my shoulder, and they were right there with me. And that was a big turning point for me in my life, and it was all centered around my college football playing experience. So I think athletics are just a great vehicle for young people. And I think, it's not all about the win-loss record. It's about the experience, the relationships you build, and the things you can learn about yourself playing whatever sport it is.
That's really good. I think it's easy for us as parents to get focused on the win-loss. And I'm actually in a situation right now with one of my kids where there's a lot of lessons being learned. And it's really difficult for me to watch this as a parent, but this may actually be the best thing for this child, even though it's super hard. But it all kind of centers around wanting to play sports and figuring all that out. So, yeah, I mean, I think it's a really good vehicle. And I know that for our family in particular, I know this is the way it is for a lot of families, it provides a lot of different opportunities for kids to learn and grow in different ways that they wouldn't have if they weren't involved in sports. So that's a really good point.
And one last thing I'll add is, as a follow-on to my coaching and my playing careers, about 10 years ago, I decided to get involved as an official. That was my way to pay it forward or kind of give something back to the game. I did grow up playing a fair amount of hockey and football, so I chose to be a hockey official, and I've been certified with USA Hockey for the last, I guess this is the 11th year. I've done 10 years with U.S. Lacrosse. But the thing that I've loved about that is that has actually become a ministry for me. I love to take the ice for a hockey game. I know that the parents are going to be pounding on the glass. I know none of them are going to invite me to their house for dinner because I'm the guy wearing the stripes and making calls either they like or they don't like.
Right.
But you know what? To talk to the coaches before the game and just remind them, hey, I'm here to keep the kids safe. I'm going to call it as I see them, and I'm probably not going to get everything right, but let's let the kids have fun. I always cover off those three things with the coaches. And you know what? They tend to accept that and say, hey, yeah, that makes sense. Let's have a good game. And things work out quite well that way. So I really do enjoy the officiating that I do, and I'm still blessed to be doing it at my age. I should mention to you, I am the oldest hockey official in the Indianapolis Hockey Officials Association, which we've got over 140 officials.
Wow.
So that gives you some idea.
Yeah, that's good for you. Like I look at you and I say, you know what, when and I'm not saying you're old. You just have done so much stuff in your life, Bud. I'm like, I want to be like Bud because you just keep doing, like you said, like you want to pay it forward. I mean, we're getting to the point where we're going to be empty nesters in about 3 years, and I'm already starting to think of ways that I can continue to be involved in our community because that's one thing that I love, and it's exactly what you just said. Like this was a way for you, to give back. I don't think I'm going to be refereeing hockey. I can tell you that right now, but I can't tell you I'm going to try to do something.
I will say this, though. You and I are both very blessed to be part of the Shine FM family because every day we get to go out into the world, and you do it on the air, but I get to do it when I call on businesses in the Indianapolis area and so forth and talk about our faith and talk about the importance of having Jesus Christ in your life and accepting him as your Lord and Savior and really, truly starting to view your life as a ministry. How can I give back to others? How can I do a better job of loving my neighbors? And for me, in many ways, just since I've joined Shine a little over a year ago now, it's been life-changing. So I love the fact that I get a chance to work with you, Heather, and everybody that's part of our Shine FM team.
Yeah, we do have a great team of people for sure. And I am constantly reminded that that isn't the case for everyone. And I do feel really blessed and just very, very happy that I get to work with the group of people that we both get to work with. It's a very, very amazing place to work. And like you said, to get to share with people every single day about our relationship with Jesus and how we can encourage others in their relationship with Jesus. It's a gift and it isn't something to be taken lightly either. It's like not everybody gets to do this. And so it does feel like a privilege to be able to do this. Well, if people wanted to get a hold of any of your books, Bud, how could they do that?
You know what? I have a website, which is very simply www.budboughton, BOUGHTON.com. And when you go to the splash page on there, you'll see across the top kind of the different icons you can click on, but one of them I think says about the books. You can go there and you can read reviews and information about all 3 of my books. You can order a book directly from the website. You can do it as well from Amazon.com. The book's out there, but I will tell you, if you ever want a personalized copy that's signed or whatever, I'm more than glad to do that. And probably the easiest way is go through my website.
Awesome.
That's probably the way to do it.
Okay. Well, awesome. Thanks so much for talking to me today, Bud, and I can't wait to hear some feedback from our listeners when they get a hold of your book, and I'm sure you're going to get some feedback, so be prepared, Bud.
Well, that's great.